So it's been a few days now since Avengers Endgame came out, so most people have watched it, so I'm gonna do some spoiler talk. So the first scene is Hawkeye teaching his daughter how to use the bow and arrow, and his wife is making a picnic for the whole family. And then seconds later, the snap happens, and Hawkeye's whole family turns to dust. And then the whole Marvel Studios logo plays, and then we get Nebula and Tony playing games on the ship. And they kind of get along too, so that's nice to see. And then we see Tony sending Pepper the message we saw in the first teaser trailer, and then he goes to sleep, and then Captain Marvel comes to rescue Tony and Nebula. We get back to Avengers HQ, and Tony reunites with Pepper and Steve. So in the next scene, most of the Avengers gather up, and Tony gets pretty pissed off. Steve was just asking Tony about coordinates and where Thanos could be, and then Tony just gets mad at Steve, starts bickering, and then he says how Steve wasn't there to help and they lost. Goes back to what he says in Age of Ultron of how the Earth needs a suit of armor around the world like Ultron, but that didn't work out, right? Tony also mentions some few other callbacks from previous movies and throws them all at Steve, and then Tony collapses. So he's pretty sick, so he stays in bed, and Captain Marvel decides to go kill Thanos by herself. Until Nebula says there's no need because she knows where Thanos is. They then play the scene that Marvel released a couple weeks ago where they're about to go get Thanos. The Endgame logo then plays, and they all get on Rocket's ship and they go to kill Thanos. So Thanos is on his farm planet and he's pretty beat up after the snap, and then all of a sudden Captain Marvel shows up. Bruce Banner with the Hulkbuster also shows up. Thor comes, War Machine, Steve, Natasha, Rocket, they all just gather around Thanos. Even Nebula's there. Now Thor decapitates Thanos, and they all find out that the gauntlet has no Infinity Stones because Thanos used the stones to destroy the stones, essentially. And that nearly killed Thanos, which is why he's really weak in this scene. And then right after, Thor goes for the head. He literally chops Thanos' head off. So Thanos dies, and 5 years passes, and then we see Black Widow giving some Skype calls to War Machine, Captain Marvel, Okoye, Nebula, and Rocket. They all kind of go on their separate missions now. And by the way, I'm really not a fan of Captain Marvel's new haircut. I'm glad that Rocket dissed her about it, but yeah, it's not really good. So everyone leaves the Skype call except for War Machine, Rhodey, and he talks about how Clint Barton, where Hawkeye, has been murdering people in Mexico. And then Rhodey mentions that finding Clint wouldn't even be a good idea. So he leaves, and then Black Widow just breaks down. Like, this is the first time she probably cried in the whole 22 movies, and probably the most emotional she's ever gotten. And also wanted to mention that all the scenes where Black Widow was present I thought were really good. Scarlett Johansson gave a tremendous performance, and that cannot be understated. And to be quite honest, this is probably her best performance as Black Widow. So Steve comes and he says that, we should all move on. It's over, it's done. But Nat refuses because being an Avenger changed her for the better, and even though everyone's gone, she wants to still be a good person. The Avengers are really her only family. And before she met the Avengers, she was a Russian assassin, and she basically doesn't want to be that anymore. She wants to be a good person, regardless if the Avengers are gone or alive. After that, we go to San Francisco, and a rat steps on the return button in the Quantum Realm van, and Ant-Man comes out. And also wanted to mention that Ken Jeong made a cameo as a storage worker, so that was pretty neat. And then after, Scott goes to a park and he sees these monuments with all the snap victims, and he got all worried and stuff, so he went to his home to look for Cassie. And turns out she survived the snap, and she's like all grown up now. Like, I'm pretty sure she was literally 6 years old in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and now she's like 17. And I kind of screwed this up. I screwed up the order. So when Steve and Nat were talking, Ant-Man shows up at the Avengers compound, and they let him in, and he proposes the idea of time travel with the Quantum Realm. They go talk to Tony about it at his new house near a river, and Tony just turns it down. He just says it's not possible. I also wanted to point out that Tony and Pepper are married, and they have a child named Morgan. This is also the first scene where Tony seems normal and happy. So they go back, and Steve says, "We need a bigger brain." And then the movie cuts to Steve, Natasha, and Scott at a diner with Professor Hulk, which is basically Bruce Banner's mind and personality, but in the Hulk's body. There's a funny moment when the kids, well, like some kids, they go up to Hulk and ask for a picture. They take it. Hulk asks the kids if they want a picture with Ant-Man, and they're like, no. They're like awkwardly shaking their head. So they go back and forth for a really long time, and Scott's just like, just take the goddamn phone. We go back to Tony's place, and he discovers that time travel does work. And yeah, he puts his daughter to sleep, and she says, "I love you 3000." So you've probably seen that literally everywhere, Twitter, Instagram. So yeah, that's where it comes from. And then back at the compound, they do time travel tests on Ant-Man. And after a few tries, it does work. So Tony comes to the compound and he says, "We're assembling a team," and he basically gives Cap his shield back. And very soon after, War Machine, Nebula, and Rocket arrive, and they kind of bully Ant-Man a bit, destroys Taco, but Hulk eventually gives him back a new Taco. Right after, Bruce and Rocket go look for Thor and New Asgard, and they meet Valkyrie again. She was in Thor Ragnarok, and we learn that Korg and Meek survived the snap. So we see Thor again, and he's fat now. He has a beer belly, and he grew out his hair again and his beard. So clearly the past 5 years have not been kind to Thor, as, he kind of has some PTSD from Thanos. Regardless, he comes back, and the Avengers decide to make a plan on how to get the Infinity Stones by time travel. So they decide that Steve, Tony, Bruce, and Scott will go back to New York in 2012 to get the Mind, Space, and Time Stone. Thor and Rocket go back to Asgard in 2013 in the events of Thor the Dark World, and they get the Reality Stone. Thor also gets back Mjolnir. Rhodey and Nebula go back to the events of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 in the first scene to get the Power Stone. Thanos finds out the Avengers' plan because 2014 Nebula is able to, somewhat connect with current Nebula, and, he kind of, is able to read current Nebula's thoughts, and so basically he can see, everything current Nebula's been through and, the Avengers' plan and what's on her mind, basically. So Rhodey is able to get back to Avengers HQ with the Power Stone, but Nebula doesn't, and she gets captured by Thanos. And jumping back to New York, Bruce is able to find the Ancient One, so he gets the Time Stone from her. Steve goes and gets the Tesseract, which holds the Mind Stone. We get a nice callback to Cap Winter Soldier, as Cap is in the elevator with SHIELD agents, or Hydra agents. Captain America whispers "Hail Hydra" to one of them, and he's able to escape the elevator with the Tesseract. And right after that, he meets Old Cap, and they fight, duke it out, and Old Cap is like, "I can do this all day," and current Cap is like, "Yeah, I know." And current Steve wins the battle by distracting old Steve by saying Bucky is alive, and he mind controls him and gets the Tesseract. Tony and Scott fail to get the Space Stone, and basically Cap and Tony have to go back to 1970 to get the Space Stone and some more Pym particles so they can use the Quantum Realm again. We also get a cameo of the late Stan Lee. This is his last cameo, unfortunately, so it was nice to see him one more time. He's like an absolute legend. I just love seeing him one more time on screen. And so did the crowd. We were all cheering really loudly. So Cap gets the Pym particles, and he runs into Margaret Carter's office, which is Peggy, and he sees a photo of him back in World War II, and he sees Peggy in the room across him. And this is a bit of foreshadowing, just saying. Also, Tony gets the Mind Stone from a vault, and he runs into Howard Stark. And there's also a touching moment between those two right when they say goodbye. In our fourth and last group, we have Black Widow and Hawkeye going to Vormir to get the Soul Stone. They keep going back and forth as to who should sacrifice himself to get the Soul Stone. Very selfless. Hawkeye wants to sacrifice himself, and Black Widow wants the same. She wants to jump, but ultimately it's Black Widow who dies. I was pretty sad to see this happen. Black Widow is... I really do like her character. And, Scarlett Johansson was really good in this movie. And, I don't know, she made me like her character even more because of this movie, and it was sad to see her go. So they all go back to present time in the same, at the same time together, and They learn that Black Widow dies and Bruce is upset. Sort of. I wish we got a more angrier Hulk, more angrier Bruce in this movie after Natasha dies. Instead, he just throws a bench into a lake while Cap and Hawkeye are crying their tears out. I wish there was more emotion with Black Widow dying. I just didn't feel it. Because, she's one of the original Avengers, and I just feel like, you know, there should be more of a sadder or darker mood afterwards, and it did get sadder, but not by a whole lot. Also, Thor was like kind of laughing at them, like thinking Black Widow's actually dead. But she was actually dead and Thor was, kind of being a dick, but whatever. They took a risk with Thor's character. It's funny, but I wish he wasn't, like that for the whole movie, and he did get a bit annoying at times, but overall I thought he was pretty funny though, not gonna lie. Chris Hemsworth was really good in this movie. Afterwards, Tony builds an Infinity Gauntlet, puts all the stones in it, and they decide on who should snap and bring everyone back, and Hulk decides to do that. And it works. Birds start to pop up, and Hawkeye's wife calls him, and yeah, that works. I forgot to mention that 2014 Nebula came back as, dressed in the quantum realm suit, so it's not the real Nebula. She also gives Pym particles to Thanos, and Thanos teleports to Avengers HQ right after the snap, or after Hulk snap, and then he starts firing at the headquarters. And this sidelines Scott, Bruce, Rhodey, and Rocket as they're kind of underground beneath the water, and they're kind of stuck. And Hawkeye is also kind of stuck, but he's kind of in this tunnel. He gets the Infinity Gauntlet and he runs because Thanos' army, or the Chitauri, are underground and they're trying to get him. Thanos is sitting on rock, and Cap, Steve, and Thor go after him. Thor gets Stormbreaker as well as Mjolnir and suits up. So we basically get one of the best fights in the entire MCU, Thor, Steve, Tony versus Thanos. Going back to Hawkeye, he escapes the Chitauri and he meets with 2014 Nebula. 2014 Nebula tells Thanos that she's found the Infinity Gauntlet and the stones, but just in time, 2014 Gamora and current Nebula comes in, saves Hawkeye, and they kill Nebula. 2014 Nebula, that is. Back to the Thanos fight, Tony gets sidelined for a bit. Thanos almost kills Thor as he grabs Stormbreaker and almost cuts through his... Well, he does cut through his armor, but basically almost cuts through him. But Thor summons Mjolnir, hits Thanos in the head, and Captain America catches Mjolnir. So he basically summons lightning and swings it, wields it, and he just slams Thanos with it. It was a great callback to the comics and definitely one of the best moments in the whole movie. Unfortunately, it doesn't last too long, and Thanos obliterates Cap. He is basically almost dead. He breaks his shield with his sword, and Cap is basically done. And for 20 seconds straight, we just see Cap slowly standing up, strapping on his shield in front of Thanos and basically his whole army. Chitauri, Outriders, the Black Order, and a bunch of other things we've never seen before. After getting to his feet fully, I honestly thought Cap was gonna say, "I can do this all day," but he doesn't, sadly. And a few seconds after, we hear Sam, aka Falcon, say, "Cap, on your left." And then portals start to open, created by Doctor Strange, and then Black Panther and Shuri walks out, and another Wakandan soldier. And soon, basically all the heroes come back, and this scene and the music that went in the background was honestly one of the most emotional parts of the whole movie. So basically there's several portals and everyone comes back, and yeah, literally everyone, all the Wakandan soldiers, Dusted Avengers, Guardians, literally everybody, and even Valkyrie was leading an army to fight and help the Avengers. And one of the best parts of the whole movie was we got to hear Cap say Avengers Assemble, which is a freaking amazing tribute to the comics. And after that whole thing was just monumental. The Avengers and their army versus Thanos and their army. The music in the background by Alan Silvestri, the composer. It was awesome, guys. It was awesome. That whole battle lasted about like, I'm not sure, 20 minutes. I wish it was a bit longer. I could have stayed and watched like an hour of that. That was like amazing. During the battle, the Avengers were kind of playing game of keep away with Thanos. Like Thanos is trying to get the gauntlet and the Avengers are like trying to get it away from him. That was pretty cool. And also Captain Marvel shows up, and there was this all-female Avengers scene which felt super forced and lasted way too long. I really didn't think that was necessary at all. It was really awkward. So basically near the end of the final battle, Thanos kind of knocks out Thor, Cap, Captain Marvel, and Iron Man, and he ends up getting the gauntlet. So Thanos gets it and he says, I am inevitable, just like at the start of the movie. He snaps to try and kill everyone else again, but it doesn't work because the Infinity Stones are not there and it's in possession of Iron Man. So basically, Tony steals the Infinity Stone somehow when he was fighting Thanos, and so apparently he has an Infinity Gauntlet built into his nanotech armor. So he wields it. He says, "I am Iron Man," and he snaps, and basically Thanos and his whole army dies. But that snap was so much, and it kills Iron Man, unfortunately. So basically, Spider Man, Pepper, Cap, Thor, all the Avengers gather around Tony and they watch him die peacefully. And Pepper says, "It's okay now, we're safe." They make a big funeral for Tony, and literally everyone was there. Even the little kid from Iron Man 3, I think it was Harley or something, yeah, he was there too. And yeah, the final few scenes was Cap returning to the past to return the Infinity Stones. But instead, he basically spends his whole life, or like relives his whole life in the past, and comes back as old Steve Rogers, like he's 90 years old or something. And finally, old Steve gives Falcon his Captain America shield, and now Falcon's the new Captain America, which also happens in the comics. So Steve doesn't die and Tony dies, and honestly, I'm quite shocked because I was like 100% sure Cap was gonna die in this movie. I was like partially sure that Tony could die, but I thought Tony would retire, to be honest. The last scene was Steve in the past dancing with Peggy, living the life he always wanted to, and the movie ends. No post-credit scene, by the way. So that's really it for the movie and the spoiler review. And yeah, Endgame's a pretty damn good film, and right now it's probably my favorite MCU film, but I'm not too sure. It's still early. I still have to like let it sink in and then rank them by myself one more time to like see where it actually ranks out of all the movies. So yeah, that's it. If you're new, like and subscribe to my channel. I post movie reviews and trailer breakdowns. And yeah, if you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you guys soon. And by the way, don't forget to check out my non-spoiler review. It's in the description below. So yeah, I'll see you guys later.